Good morning to everybody. How you doing? Hope all is well. Keep up the beautiful work. Today is Thursday, Parashat Vayigash, January 2nd. May we only see good things. Be'ezrat Hashem for all of Am Yisrael. We should hear good news, but put all the dates aside. Today is the 8th day of Hanukkah. Do not let it go to waste. 8th day, our rabbis tell us, is the hitting the final nail, the makeh patish, the final touch, be'ezrat Hashem itbarach, on this holy holiday. Rav Biederman brings down that there's no havdalah when we finish Hanukkah. This way we could take the holiness of Hanukkah throughout the entire year. And as you know, I sent on the chat last night that our rabbis tell us what a great tzaddik, which is you guys, could accomplish on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Any human being could accomplish on this holy day of the 8th day of Hanukkah, Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. Just because there's no more Hanukkah parties and there's no more Sufganiyot and all the latkes, that's it. And we're all going to WeightWatchers.com or Ozempic.com or all the .coms, even though all that's over, but we still have till 5 o'clock tonight. And if you want to keep Rabbeinu Tam, Yalla will give you an extra 45 minutes approximately to keep the holiday going and take the holiness and all of the specialness of this day and take it with us throughout the entire year. Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. Good things always. May we hear that the hostages come home, the soldiers, peace in Am Yisrael, and the entire world. So before we get to our featured presentation, just a quick point. Tonight is the yahrzeit of the great Rav Chaim Shmulevitz Alav Hashalom, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. May his merit be a blessing for all of us. So even though we finished lighting candles, if you want to light a candle tonight or tomorrow, or put $1 in the epah for the great tzaddik, for him to be a blessing for you. Imagine being a Rosh Yeshiva of a yeshiva in 3 different countries, maybe even more. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Lithuania of the Mir Yeshiva. Then, unfortunately, World War II happened, and they had to get up and go somewhere. Other people would just say, boys, that's it. The yeshiva's closing. There's a war here. We hope for the best. But just like a father would not give up his children if there's a war, we can't say, okay, there's a war, that's it, it's all over. Obviously, a parent will never do that. So too, the rabbi does not do that with his students. And they moved, they even went to Cuba for a little. They went to Japan back then, which was Shanghai. We know a lot of people had to do with that story. Mr. Nissim Towel was an advocate for the Jewish people to be accepted into Japan. They knew him, and there was a great tzaddik who was not Jewish. He was from the Hasidei Umot HaOlam, and he was the one, even though he could get in trouble, he gave visas to everybody. He saved the entire Mir Yeshiva, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad, to allow them to go in Shanghai. They lived there. The accommodations were not that great, but it was better than, God forbid, being in Shema Yisrael, one of the concentration camps. Not only that, but there was a fellow Jew who had a dream prior, many years before, wealthy man, one of the only few Jews in that area in Japan, and his father came to him in a dream and said build a big Beit Knesset, a big knis. And he's like, what, who's coming? Then just build one. And he built one, and they didn't understand why, and it was like empty. And all of a sudden, the Mir Yeshiva came, and Yishtabach Shemo, that's where their hub was, and that's where the learning was for a very long time, Yishtabach Shemo. And then the Mir Yeshiva after Shanghai, some came to the United States and built the famous Mir Yeshiva that we have here by the great Rav Shmuel Birnbaum, Rav Avraham Kalmanowitz, aka, and Rav Shraga Moshe, and his children are their children are still leading the yeshiva. They should live and be well. But Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, he went to Eretz Yisrael and he built the Miri Yeshiva over there, where thousands and thousands and thousands of students are there every single year. Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. Just from that alone, we should be mesmerized by this rabbi because, like we said, there's no giving up. You have something to do, you have a mission, no matter how hard. Could it get harder than World War II? He went from Lithuania to Shanghai to Eretz Israel, and look what he ended up doing because he was L'Shem Shamayim. There are times that he was famous for crying. Now, he was not dramatic. He was as more real as they could be. He would have students over in his home for Friday night dinner, Shabbat lunch, because he had a yeshiva and boys need a place to go. And some Hasidim have a custom for every bite of food or spoonful of soup that they take on Shabbat, they say Lechavod Shabbat Kodesh, Lechavod Shabbos Kodesh. Every single bite. Imagine our community with all the foods that we have. We'll have to say it like 3,000 times on a Friday night. We should eat with good health. Be'ezrat Hashem. Long story short, the Hasid is in the house. Lechavod Shabbos Kodesh, Lechavod Shabbos Kodesh, and he's eating the soup. The rabbi picks up his own soup and he starts to eat the soup and he says, Lichvod habeten sheli. This is not in honor of Shabbat. This is in honor of my stomach. What was the rabbi saying? He was saying, the boy keeps saying in honor of Shabbat. Yes, it is in honor of Shabbat. But at the end of the day, you got to be real. You got to say to yourself, hello, you're not really eating 1,000,000% for Shabbat. It's a nice hot bowl of chicken soup with matzo balls on a Friday night, a cold winter night. So, of course, you're enjoying it as well. The rabbi said that to show how real we have to be. So, now that we gave that disclaimer, we show how real the rabbi was, and obviously not dramatic, but there were 2 times that he cried that's documented. One was every year and one was every once in a while. And that was number one. Every single time he went to the kever of Rachel Imenu. We hope to see our forefathers and matriarchs with the Mashiach up and going and all our loved ones, Bezrat Hashem. But we know Hashem tells Rachel Imenu to stop crying. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, because Hashem would have to listen to Rachel Imenu. She saved the day in the story of Nebuchadnezzar. He wanted to do what, unfortunately, many of them want to do, and there was a decree in heaven that he has permission to do so. Unfortunately, comes along Rachel Imenu and saves the day. Hashem says to Rachel, stop crying, because I have to listen to you. And if Hashem says that, then Rachel technically listens. Comes along Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, he comes into the kever Rachel. He's famous for this, and he cannot stop crying, and he's talking to his mother. He says, Mommy, Mommy, Rachel Imenu. And like we said, he was more real than real could be. And if he's really calling her mother, she is our mother. How could she be our mother, BTW? Because number one, if she saved the day for all of us, then she's like our mother. Also, Yosef, we could say we come from the seed of Yosef, from the lineage of Yosef, that there's no ayin hara. Why? We could be we're from Yehuda, Binyamin, because in this week's parasha, next week, Yosef is the one that supported the entire nation, and if he supported the entire nation, that means that he was our father. An adopted father, halachically, is a father with many aspects, and therefore we are considered that we came from him. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz would go to Kever Rachel, and he would cry and say, Mommy, Mommy, Hashem tells you to stop crying, but we beg of you to continue crying and don't stop crying, till we're all back in Yerushalayim Habnuyah. One of his students asked him, Rabbi, how could you tell her to keep crying? If Hashem says to stop crying, who are we to tell her to continue crying? And the answer to that is, he said, because it's like a regular father-mother relationship. Sometimes a father does not want to give their kid a credit card to buy a mad happy sweatshirt when she has already six and they're $9,000 each. You could go buy a regular sweatshirt, heck yeah, from Uniqlo for $20 and it's just as good. I'll write on it for you, mad happy. How you doing? And the father says no. But then the kid goes to the mother and says, Ma, please, daddy's bothering me. And for some reason, it makes it happen. The same thing over here. Hashem says no, but we tell our mother, please keep crying to Hashem and get us out of this galut. So that's one time he cried, but there's another time that he cried as well every single year on Rosh Hashanah. He didn't cry because he wanted something to come to him that year. Of course he did. And he wanted the Mashiach and he wanted the people to stop suffering in Am Yisrael and all the hostages home and the soldiers, etc. But there's another reason why he cried when it came to the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah in the story of Hannah. He would cry hysterical. Why? Because we know the story just quickly in a nutshell. We know there was a man, his name was Elkanah. He had two wives back then. Then it was permissible. And one had 10 sons, Penina, 10 children, and Hannah had nothing. And Penina really broke her heart that Hannah did not have children. So Penina used to egg her on and irk her, Hazita, to make her sad so she could cry harder to Hashem. And when a person cries from their heart, especially a woman with pain in their heart, Hashem listens. So she wanted to afflict pain on her so she could pray, which was a beautiful thing. She did it l'shem shamayim, 100% for the sake of heaven. But guess what? Yes, Hannah ended up having children, but she says in the famous piyut that we say, Vatitbalel Hannah, the poem that she wrote, it says, Verabat banim lala. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hannah, every time she had a child, Penina had to go to the cemetery, Bet Minan, for her child. Lo alenu v'lo alechem. How could that be? Why? Because she made her feel bad, but she was doing it for her sake. And the answer is playing with fire, a child could get burned. We never hurt anyone's feelings. And when the rabbi would get up to the part of this subject in the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah, he would not stop crying because he says, look how careful we have to be with people's feelings. Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. So just like he told Rachel Imenu down here to pray to Hashem and Hashem will bring the salvation, we hope on this yahrzeit when people learn for his zechut and they pray that he should pray to Hashem for us, we hope he goes to Rachel in heaven and tells her to cry to Hashem and make the Mashiach come. Now for our featured presentation, we'll do some parasha for tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. There's a lot to talk about, so Yalla will give a little tidbit today and then tomorrow we will continue with the help of Hashem. So now we're in last week's parasha. We mentioned last week that Yosef is sitting on a table with his brother Binyamin. He put the brothers according to the mother that they have. Leah's children on one table, Bilhan the other, Zilpan the other, and he's making believe he knows everything from his magical cup that he has. And he tells Binyamin that Binyamin doesn't have a mother. Yosef says he doesn't have a mother. Yalla, let's sit on the same table. And they start talking. Yosef asks Binyamin, are you married? They keep telling us you're the baby brother. How baby are you? Are you married? And he says, yes, I am married. He says, nice. He says, do you have any children? He says, yes. He says, how many? He's waiting to hear one, maybe two. He says he has 10 sons, about everyone with beracha. And he's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Yosef himself had 2 sons, and Binyamin had 10 sons. And our rabbis tell us, why did Yosef only have 2 sons? Well, of course, there's Kabbalistic reasons and Hashem's plan, but there are other reasons as well. As we mentioned, Yosef was the shalit. He was the ruler, not the ruler of Egypt only. He was the ruler of his own desires. He was in total control. He's known as Yosef HaSadiq. He represents the 6 of the 7 great pillars of Am Yisrael. That's why there's a concept to go to the Aliyah, to the Torah on Shabbat morning for the 6th Aliyah, because it represents Yosef. So Yosef was the ruler of his desires. He never gave in his entire life. Yaakov Avinu in next week's parasha bows down to Yosef. Well, Yosef also knew a halacha that at a time of famine, when the world is hungry, you cannot bring children into this world. Obviously, now, of course, when the world is suffering, we want to multiply even more. But we know, just like on Kippur, there are limits to a husband and wife's relationship. So to Yosef in the years of the famine, and hence he only had 2 children. Yosef also, as we mentioned, never ate an entire day until the last customer on food online got food, because he said, if somebody's hungry, I'm going to sit there stuffing my face. That's how great Yosef was. So anyway, they're sitting at the table, and he asked Binyamin, what are your sons' names? And Binyamin gives a whole list of names that seemed very, very different from what anyone would expect. And Yosef says, if you don't mind me telling you, how come you have these names for your sons? They sound a little different. And Binyamin gets a little choked up, and Binyamin tells Yosef that he had a brother that was lost, and his brother was his life. It was his only full sibling from the mother and the father. Their mother passed away. They only had each other, and now Yosef was gone. So he named all of the sons that he had after the story of Yosef. He said Chupim. Why Chupim? Because he never saw Yosef's chuppah. Why Bela? Because he was Balua in the world, he was swallowed. Why Becher? Because he was the Bechor. And he's going through all of them. Yosef cannot take it anymore. He runs outside to the restroom. He busts out crying. And after he cries, he washes his face, comes back, and he tells Binyamin, listen, I hope you know how to keep a secret, but it's really me, Yosef. And Binyamin kept the secret. They continued the charade. He said, I'm going to put this magical sketch cup into your bag. And so it was. All the brothers left. They slept there one night, and then they left on Saturday morning. Can a person travel outside of a city Shabbat? Can a person travel at all on Shabbat? Absolutely not. However, over here, their lives were in major danger. Shimon was taken in prison. All the brothers were almost killed because Yosef accused them of being spies. So 100% we save people's lives on Shabbat. Nothing stands in the way of saving a life on Shabbat. Yishtabach Shemo. God should watch us all and protect us. So the brothers did leave Mitzrayim. But Yosef tells Menashe, pay attention. We know there's something called Techum Shabbat. That is 2,000 Amah radius, about 4,000 Amah radius outside of a city. You're allowed to hang out in there if you walk out of the city, but past the 2,000 Amah mark, you're not allowed to leave on Shabbat. We call this Tchum Shabbat. Yosef tells Menashe, he says, go check if my brothers are waiting by the border of Tchum Shabbat. Yes, they left Egypt and they're allowed to, but now once they're out of danger, they don't have to travel anymore. If they're waiting and camping for Shabbat to be over, then bring them back. That means Grandpa Yaakov is not in danger. He doesn't need food emergency. The people there don't need food emergency, so we could continue the charade. But if they went past the Tichum Shabbat and they're still traveling on Shabbat Kodesh, that means that Yaakov Avinu needs food emergency. Do not bring them back. Menashe heads out. He sees them camping, waiting for 3 stars to come out. He said that means there's no emergency for them to leave. He brings them back. But he says that he comes and they're like, oh boy, what is it now? Just when they thought they were out of trouble, Uli, something happens. And Menashe says, why did you repay good that we gave you with bad? Somebody stole the cup of the king, the magical cup. And they said, are you kidding? We're honest people. Don't you see? We gave back the money that were in our bags. And the Menashe says Shimon and Binyamin did not return any money. Shimon because he stayed and Binyamin wasn't there. They'll check Shimon's and they'll check Binyamin. And they start to check in Shimon, and then they go to Binyamin and they find the cup. And now they take Binyamin, put him in handcuffs, and start to bring him. He's now the slave of Yosef in Mitzrayim. And the brothers are like, what is going on here? Now something's wrong because everything they did and that happened to them, they knew it was karma. They knew it was midah keneged midah. But what's going to happen now? It's just for no reason. Binyamin did nothing wrong, and that's why they were bewildered. They were perplexed. They didn't know what was going on. They come to Egypt. They're standing in front of Yosef, and Yosef continues the whole charade. How could you do this? And he says, Binyamin is the slave. Yehuda says, who needs a little scrawny slave? Take the big, strong slave. Take me. And Yehuda, it was stronger, obviously, than Binyamin. But Yosef says, if Binyamin was the one who did the crime, then he's going to do the time. Well, what happens? Yehuda gets close to Yosef. He roars like a lion. Our rabbis tell us blood was dripping out of his eyes. His chest hairs pierced up like spears, and his shirt ripped. He roared so loud that Paro fell off his throne. There were 70 steps going up to Paro's throne. He, as we learned already, with the 70 languages, and Paro goes Heke Humpty Dumpty style, falling down all the steps. Yehuda roared so loud he thought for sure Yosef is going to get scared. He thought for sure he's going to get Binyamin back. Yosef didn't flinch. Yosef tells him, you think we're scared of you? We're not scared of you. He tells his son Menashe, show them how strong you are. And Menashe kicks the beam, holding up the palace. The entire palace shook. Our rabbis tell us Paro just finished walking back up the stairs because he fell down the stairs. And now once he went back up, he fell down again a second time. That would be something if there was a time machine I would not mind seeing on my agenda of things I would like to see. But long story short, once they saw that, the brothers start to talk in Hebrew and they say, how could it be that this guy is so strong? Only the children of Yaakov are so strong. Didn't they know that they didn't know that this was the children of Yaakov? And now Yehuda saw that the tough approach isn't working, so he starts the soft approach. He starts to cry and he starts to get Yosef all emotional, and that's how the beginning of the parasha starts off. And we will continue tomorrow with the help of Hashem. I hope everyone has the greatest day. Take advantage of this holy day of the last day of Hanukkah. It should be a blessing. May we hear good news for everyone. Besorot tovot, Yeshuot v'nehamot, Hanukkah sameach. All the best. Take care. Bye.